Shanti. So today's verse is, we're in the second chapter now. Text number, where is it? Text number 4. So Arjuna is saying, Arjuna uvacha katham bhishmamaham sankedranam cha madhusudhanam ishubi pratayotyami pujarhara varisudhanam. Arjuna says, O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? This verse is actually a deceptive verse, if I could use that term. And what I mean by that when I say deceptive is that it's deceptively simple. Arjuna is, in a very straightforward manner, he's asking Krishna, how can I possibly attack and try to kill my grandfather Bhishma and my Guru Maharaj Dronacharya? They are, after all, my superiors. They are worthy for my worship. How can I possibly do this? Two things we can note before we go on to the more controversial aspect of what we can learn here. And that is Arjuna is intimating to Krishna, how is it that you're asking me to do this? How would you feel? And this comes to light in Prabhupada's purport. How would you feel, Arjuna is saying, my dear Krishna, if you were to attack and if you had to kill Ugrasena, right? If you had to fight your family members in a large-scale battle and you had to kill Ugrasena. So how can you ask me to kill Bhishma and Drona? How would you feel if you were in my shoes? Arjuna gives many excuses why he should not go to war. I was actually just giving a Bhagavad Gita class to the Gurukul students today. And we were talking about the various reasons Arjuna gives for not going to war, not engaging in battle. And I'm not going to go into all those reasons here, but in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna presents so many reasons why he should not go to war. There's them all. Now, that Krishna or Arjuna is trying to, that Arjuna is wrong, right? Arjuna gives very many valid reasons based on Shastra, Manusamhita, and all these different things. Very good reasons why he should not go to war. And in that sense, according to the Veda, he's right. Bhishma and Drona, their superiors, are not to be killed. So on the one hand, he's right. On the other hand, Krishna is telling him in what way he's wrong, in what way he's short-sighted. Now, one very interesting thing we should note is that when I was going to school, we had my Bhagavad Gita philosophy teacher was a scholar in his own right. And he would giving our philosophy class, we would have debates. And he was so expert at philosophy and argument, of course, was that he could argue anything using the Bhagavad Gita. Any activity, whether it was killing animals, killing cows, he could take any argument and he could use the Bhagavad Gita by twisting the words, twisting what Krishna is saying, twisting all the philosophy. He could make it sound like killing cows was okay. Quoting Bhagavad Gita. That's how expert he was. He was showing us how people can take what they want from the Bhagavad Gita, twist the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita and get whatever they want and say, oh, this is Bhagavad Gita, this is Dharma. And the reason why I say this is because Arjuna is giving so many reasons why he should not go to war. And they're all based on Dharma. They're all based on the Veda and Shastra. But as many reasons as Arjuna gives for not going to war, there are that many reasons why he should go to war, also based on Dharma and Shastras. In other words, you can argue anything using principles of Dharma, using the principles from the Vedas. You can argue anything. So Arjuna is throwing up all these arguments of why he should not go to war, and we know in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna. Let's not get bogged. I mean, we should understand. I'm not taking away from the fact we should understand the reasons why. I'm taking away from the fact that Krishna is defeating his arguments. But that, in a way, is actually a sideshow. The true issue is actually in the end of the Bhagavad Gita. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. That is the last instruction. That is the last philosophical point Krishna makes. Sarva dharma parityaja. Give up all this dharma, shastra, this, that, the other, because you can argue anything, absolutely anything, on the basis of dharma. Krishna says, Sarva dharma parityaja. Give up principles of dharma. Now, of course, that can be frightening. Well, how can you say give up the principles of dharma? The reason why, there's two parts to this. Dharma is absolutely important. We know the entire 3rd chapter, 5th chapter is all about following the principles of religion, following the principles of dharma, doing your duty, right? We know this. When Krishna is telling Arjuna, Sarva dharma parityaja, the second line is key to understanding that verse. Sarva dharma parityaja, mamekam sharanam vraja. Sharanam, mamekam sharanam. Surrender unto me. If we're not going to surrender unto Krishna, then we must follow dharma. Must follow dharma. Only if we, under the shelter of Krishna, the shelter, the protection of Krishna, then we do not have to worry about dharma. Because dharma has its effect, has its sway, its influence over the material realm, prakriti. In the realm of matter, in the realm of prakriti, material energy, that's where dharma has its influence. When we are conditioned by material nature, then we must follow dharma. Only when we are not influenced by material nature can we set aside dharma. Right? Only when we're not influenced by material nature. But even then there's a caveat we know from the 3rd chapter when Krishna says, even I follow prescribed duties, otherwise people would take my example and do all kinds of foolishness. But philosophically speaking, the conditioned soul, the conditioned living entity must follow dharma because the living entity is under the control of prakriti. That is a very key point, and this is where this verse gets, this discussion is going to get a little controversial. Is because under the influence of material nature, we actually do nothing. Arjuna is saying, I don't want to kill, I don't want to get involved in war. Krishna spends the entire Bhagavad Gita telling Arjuna, you are not in control. This war is going to happen regardless of what you think, regardless of what you do, regardless of anything. This is going to happen. You are not in control. And not only of whether or not the battle goes on, Krishna says repeatedly in the 3rd chapter, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, here in the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says repeatedly, you are going to act according to your nature. You are forced. The conditioned living entity is forced to act according to material nature. I was watching this one BBC documentary, and it is very unfortunate. I was trying to, when I was preparing for today's class, I was trying to find that documentary, the link, because I watched the documentary, I copied the link no longer works. I copied this, I saw this documentary about, not a documentary, an expose, if you will, years ago, about 3-4 years ago, and I copied the link. I should have copied the name of the documentary, the name of the reporter who had produced it and directed it and so on. I could not find the link. Anyways, there was a documentary on consciousness and particularly on choice, how we choose what we want to do in life. And this reporter, this British reporter, was going around, he was talking to philosophers, so on and so forth. At one point he goes into a university in England, and he was talking to the professors and the researchers about consciousness. And they hooked him up to a machine for measuring brain waves and, neural activity and so on and so forth. They hooked his brain up into this machine, and then they sat him down, they were talking to him, and as they were talking to him, they were asking him various choices. Do you want pizza? Would you rather lasagna? Do you like this? Do you like that? Do you want to go here? Do you want to do that? Where would you like to go vacation? And the person was sitting there, the producer, the BBC journalist producer, he was answering, I would rather this, I'd rather that. Sometimes he would answer immediately. Sometimes he would take a few seconds to answer, I prefer this. They gave him another test, where they put pictures in front of him. and they would say, press a button to choose which one you like. So pictures would come up, and then he would look at the picture, he'd press the one that he liked. He went through all these tests. At the end of the test, this was uncanny. This is why I was actually very, very... At the end of the test, they took him in the room, the researcher sat him down, and they showed him that every time he was asked a question, a choice, or every time he was given a choice, the computer correctly predicted, based on the information it got from his brainwaves, correctly predicted what he was going to choose 100% of the time before the journalist consciously made the choice. The computer was unerring. The moment he was presented a choice, either verbally or visually, his brain waves automatically chose. Even if it took him a second to choose, a few seconds, or a minute to choose, every single time the computer, his neural activity gave away his choice, which the computer picked up on, that this is going to be his choice, before the journalist consciously chose what he thought was his free choice, his free will. It was such an amazing study, if you will. And the researcher was saying, we've been doing this. We know that actually there's no such thing as free choice. Let me put this another way. He was saying, and I'm paraphrasing because this is a while ago since I saw this. He says, yes, you're making the choice, but the choice you're making is completely unconscious. And no matter what choice it is, you think you're consciously making a choice. The choice has already been made within the person's subconscious, and the person does not even know why they're making the choice. But the choice is already made. And Krishna goes on in the Bhagavad Gita, he's been saying this to Arjuna time and time again. He tells Arjuna, you are going to act according to your nature. You cannot get away from it. Let me just flip to the last part of the Bhagavad Gita. This is a very good point Krishna brings up when he's talking about this. If I can just bring up the verse quickly. Where was that? Chapter 18, text 60. Text 59 and 60. Krishna says, if you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. By Arjuna's very nature. Prabhupada says in the purport, Arjuna was Kshatriya. Therefore, his natural duty was to fight. The next verse. Illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction. But compelled by work born of your own nature, you will act all the same. And this is why I really don't like to give this particular lecture on this particular topic, because we have a hard time accepting that we're not in control. This is not hocus pocus. This is not philosophy. This is not the Bhagavad Gita. This is science. This is science. I really wish I could send you to that link of that researcher, of the documentary that was done by the BBC. If you can find it on your own, search Consciousness Studies, BBC study about consciousness and free choice. It was absolutely, in fact, in the end of the documentary, the producer, he leaves the university, he himself is completely gobsmacked out of the university and says, are you okay? And the BBC producer was like, you've just told me that all this time I'm thinking I'm making choices, consciously making choices. There's a difference here. He thinks I'm consciously making a choice, and you've just taken that away from me. That the choice is already subconsciously being made. Oh, and it was actually a very poignant, point the researcher says, we don't know why the choice is being made. All we know is that the subconscious choice that everyone's making, it's come from within. What we don't know is